call. If you remember, I don't know whether the very first Brainfood Live was in fact, well, no, I haven't added a title to my Facebook thing. Doesn't matter, I'm going to go live anyway. That's totally fine. Yeah, basically, the very first format of this show was you and me having a chat on random crap. And then bringing people out from the crowd. So we may actually go back to that today, folks, just as an emergency, because we've had a little bit of a change of the panel lineup. But anyway, welcome everybody to Brainfood Live on Air. It is episode 84. We are bringing it to you like we do every Friday. And we've got a fantastic show for you today. We've got an amazing topic, and it couldn't be like more perfectly timed. I don't know whether anybody's actually watching or following along on Twitter. I've been like doom scrolling for the last 24 hours or so, trying to figure out what's going on. But obviously, a seminal moment, I think, occurred about an hour ago, where Joe Biden essentially took the lead in the 4 remaining swing states, I believe. And it looks like the votes that are still to be counted are breaking heavily towards him. And the arrows are all pointing very much in that direction. So it's all happening. All our American friends are freaking out. Hence why we have a change of lineup, folks, because we can't get hold of Laurie or Lars. But that's another thing. We'll talk about that a bit later. Anyway, firstly, let's do a quick sound check as we always do. We are on Crowdcast, folks. So if you can hear me on Crowdcast, just say hello very quickly on the chat stream. We are multicasting also on LinkedIn Live, so you can hear me there. Please just give me a like, comment, hello, give me a dislike if you want. Doesn't matter. Just let me know if I can see you okay and you can hear the AV. And finally, we are on Facebook Live, where we've got now nearly 3,500 members. Would you believe it? And if you can hear me there, just give me a like, comment, dislike. Doesn't matter. Let me know I can hear you okay. And we should be ready to roll. Okay, cool. We're getting some likes. And all the rest of it. That's all good stuff. Okay, a quick word to our sponsors this week. Our sponsors this week are Workable. They are an ATS and next generation stuff, folks. If you're looking to upgrade your ATS, Workable's got to be one of the top 3 products you need to be looking at. They are a business I've been tracking, I think, for about 4 or 5 years now. I know the founder very well. Greek-based business, but they're one of the few European companies that have actually gone out and done a proper global sort of market grab, and they're now big in the US and big in other places as well. Check them out. They are a very good value for money, high impact product. You can get a free 14-day demo right there. Okay, let's get on with the show, man. As we always start, we talk about we say hello to Adam Gordon, don't we? So Adam, how are you doing? How was your week? All good?
Yeah, all good. TGI Friday, but yeah, all good generally. Thanks very much for having me on Recruiting Brainfood Live, the best show on the internet.
I think it is the best show on the internet, even though I've got no feedback on that. You know, it's like literally we just have to assume. You know,
we have to feedback.
Yeah, we have to assume the best, man. We have to assume the best. Anyway, before we dive into this topic, and I know you're well into politics as well, and in fact, of course, the US presidential election has global impact, not only on our industry, but also in our country and in other countries as well. So we're definitely going to dive into this topic a bit more. But we always review the newsletter from this week. I just wanted to get your views on that. I mean, what did you pick out? What was interesting? 2 or 3 things, man.
Yeah. Okay. So I really like we talk. A lot of the themes that we talk about they keep coming back, but it's because they develop, don't they? So I like the article that was about real-time messaging apps being just not what people want.
Yep.
And really interesting. There's somebody specific that I know who I message her on WhatsApp. And then it might be a day later or something, she'll message me back, but she'll message me back with a text message. She wants to talk on SMS rather than on WhatsApp. And the reason for that is the difference is that I don't know when she's read it, and I don't know that, to expect her. So on SMS, she can respond to me whenever she likes, whereas on WhatsApp, there's an expectation that it's real time when you see the blue ticks.
Do you think she deliberately does that? So she sees that you've messaged her, and then she doesn't read it. She waits until she's ready to text you, then she reads it, then she texts you.
Yeah,
that's bizarre behavior, mate.
Well, I think it's some people don't. I don't actually know why she's on WhatsApp right enough. I mean, she can just disconnect that.
Yeah, you can delete it. I mean, I totally get what you say though. There is a difference, and basically, SMS is just. Yeah, you can't track. There's no trackability, and you can't see when people are online or not, whether they read it, they haven't read it, etc. Makes a difference. I guess it does. Yeah.
It's to do with an expectation of when you're going to get a response and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Interestingly, it was talking about Slack as being like the enemy, and one thing that I've noticed is more and more people in my company I just get a call goes, you're getting a Slack call. And I'm getting a call through Slack, or I'm getting somebody trying to do a video meeting with me on Slack, like unscheduled. And they can see that I'm online, and that's why. So I guess that's the equivalent in working from home. That's the equivalent of just coming over and going, have you got a couple of minutes?
Yeah. But I think like, if it's unscheduled, they're demanding the time, which is an outrage these days. It's. I remember having an argument with Stephen O'Donnell about this actually, because he was very much a phone call guy. I think he's changed his view now. And we were trying to experiment why it was unacceptable to make an on-spec phone call. And we ended up going to the realization it was because it was an assertion of someone's time. It was like you're taking that person's attention. You're saying you must pay attention to me now, and my agenda is more important than yours, so you have to change your plans and switch to what I'm doing, which is what this unscheduled interrupt is, which these days is unacceptable. Yeah, you have to book it. You need to put it in the diary. Even
with a colleague?
Yeah. Or at least you need to check with an SMS, can you talk? You can't just like blaze in with a call. I think that's like, unless it's like super, super urgent. Like that's like the Klaxon 5, DEFCON 5 type of thing. I don't know, folks, you tell me, we're all recruiters here. Is it acceptable to make an unscheduled video call to a person that you know? I mean, I personally don't think so. I don't pick them up. It doesn't matter who it is, apart from my mum. She's the only person I will pick up an unscheduled call to because I'm thinking, okay, what's up? Everyone else, you know what I mean? Text me. Anyway.
Okay. Synthesia?
Yes.
Synthesia is the company which allows you to create effectively a human form that will speak your words for a video. And the big opportunity in here, I think, is for employer branding and recruitment marketing. If you want to create, a quick video because you've got a job that's come up and you're not comfortable just getting your phone out and talking on it, and the hiring manager doesn't really want to talk about it, then you just type in, this is the 30 seconds worth of text, and your person just reads, says it out, and you've on a video that you can then use.
You know what?
Really great.
Yeah, can someone please try that? I've just shared that in the chat stream. Basically, it is a AI-driven video creation tool. So essentially, if you wanted an AI avatar, like an artificial person, looks like a person, it's got an artificially generated voice, it will speak your words. You just need to type it in, what you want this person to say, and it will basically create like a newscaster style video. I think an obvious recruitment application to this, you could use that to message developers, you can use that to sort of communicate employer brand, you can do whatever, with the bonus that you don't have to take a shower, you don't have to put the makeup on, and you don't have to think about blue screens and all this type of stuff. You can literally use the tool. I've just shared the thing there. Give it a shot. Let me know what you think. One of the commentaries I made there was, the future's not going to wait for us to get comfortable with it, and I think that's definitely true. It's like this is not a human being, but here you have this amazing video production quality produced literally with 30 seconds worth of your work. So it's kind of an amazing development of how rapidly this form is developing. So yeah, super interesting.
Well, I first saw something similar with Interview, which I've posted a link to in the chat here.
Yep.
And if you just click on that link, you'll see what the interviewer looks like. I don't know if she's got a name or something, but I was smiling at Lee's message there, which said that it sounds like a wonderful new impersonal recruiting tactic. So it'll probably be a big hit.
Yeah, that's it. You never get bored of Candiotti's snarky comments. They're high value. One of these days, Lee, we're going to get you on the screen. Okay. One more thing, man, before we bring on, I think Tim Sackett is definitely with us, so we'll bring him on. Right. But before we do that, let's talk about the one more thing that you think.
Right. I've got about 5 probably, but okay. The one is the massive difference in company growth for what we describe as big tech versus everything else.
Yeah.
And, I'm not going to say that the pandemic's been staged for companies like Amazon to, really strive ahead of everybody else, where the, family-owned shop on the high street has gone into administration. But some people might think that if they read this article.
I was going to careful, man. You're going to get booted off Crowdcast with your conspiracy theories. And anyway, with Trump losing, conspiracy theories should be going out of fashion pretty darn quick. But anyway, I've just shared the New York Times article. Reason why that was valid is because Alphabet, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon posted their Q3 2020 reports last week. And of course, all of them, they're going northeast, ridiculous increase in profits and revenue and all the rest of it. I personally think that it's kind of expected, because if you think that the entire world has shifted to remote, we're getting food delivered, we're communicating a lot more online, we're doing everything via a screen. Of course, companies that provision that type of software and provision that type of tooling are going to be going through the roof. Oculus, the AR, VR. I've 3 or 4 people have told me, I just bought one of these. That would never have happened without COVID-19. But you can't tell me that this pandemic was designed to push artificial sort of augmented reality. But these technologies, it has definitely had the effect of increasing the adoption of technology. You can't get away with it. You have to do it in this digital way. So those companies are striding on forward, going further ahead.
Look, the pandemic's accelerated the future in a lot of ways. A lot of things we're doing right now. I wanted to talk about the Work From Anywhere article as well. But, a lot of the things that we're doing today, we were going to be doing. One company I know, a big whiskey business in Scotland, told me that they had a target of 50% of their people working from home by 2023. Right, and of course they just went to 100% within 3 weeks.
Yeah, it went aggressive straight away. I totally get it.
So it's accelerated the future, but I just don't know if there's zero link with the fact that it's accelerated the revenue for a small handful of very, very big companies.
It's what you mean by a link, though. I mean, obviously there's an impact and an influence, but was it ever by design? And the way I'm thinking of it, no. I mean, basically, if you study the history of pandemics, you know there's like zillions of these viruses sort of infecting all kinds of animals, every species, and they're just looking for an opportunity to jump to different species and create something really bad, which we've got a track record of doing. These pandemics have occurred multiple times, and most of the time, actually, we control them. SARS, for instance, was broadly controlled. There was only like 8,000 deaths, I think, globally on SARS. Still a big deal. We still talk about it as a big deal. But it was one example of an earlier coronavirus that was actually generally suppressed and didn't spread. Difference with this one is obviously we completely screwed it up. Much more connected world, of course, which doesn't help. Loads more travel, loads more, accelerated flights going in and out, etc. Here is where we are. Anyway, let's talk about the US presidential election and the impact on recruiting and HR. Reason why this is important for me is simply I saw Donald Trump and his entire regime as essentially, it could be interpreted as a pushback in many respects to a lot of the, if you like, social justice initiatives that we've seen in our industry. DE&I, for instance. You couldn't imagine a Trump regime being particularly behind that. And in fact, he pulled away, I think, some of the obligations in certain US scenarios where, you are allowed to discriminate in this way. So I thought, look, we need to talk about it, because having a guy like that in charge for a second go is so much more, not only from a legislation point of view, but just from a confirmation point of view. Look, are we going to start seeing reversals of a lot of these things that, HR generally tries to pioneer and push with? So your views on it so far, what is going on? I mean, it looks like Biden's going to win it. What is your verdict? What's going to happen? And how does it impact us in recruiting in HR?
Just a couple of observations before I answer that question, if that's okay. One observation is the United States of America is one of my top 3 favorite countries in the world. I absolutely love America. I love American people. They do so many things amazingly, better than anybody else does in the world. But they do some things that seem to be a step back about 300 years. I've never seen such a bad, overall coordinated election. In fact, the American political system is not fit for 2020. It's just not. The way it works,
of course,
doesn't work. You can't. Why should a billionaire be able to pay his way into becoming a presidential candidate? That's just not. It's not democratic, for a start. That's utterly shocking. Second thing is, how do you get to a point where, and this is going to be an ageist comment, I know it is. I'm going to get some flack for this, but how do you get a point where, once you're over 70, I'm not sure you're still on the ascendancy at that point.
Dude, it's 40. It's 45. You start losing it mentally from 45 onwards.
Well, that's not. I don't think 45. You're still really quite young to be the U.S. president. I think if you're in your 50s or 60s, you've probably got enough experience by that point to really know how the world works. At 45, you're a bit young. At 77, you are not on your way up. You're
definitely on your way out. I mean, it reminds me a little bit, in the 80s where you had, and again, apologies to my American friends who might get triggered by this, but I remember in the 80s, like the Soviet Union just recycled these octogenarians as the chairman of the party. It's like, another 85-year-old guy turns up and he lasts like 2 years, and another 85-year-old guy then switches in. And you think, you know what, there is a case to be made to say, probably you're edging towards the kind of age range where you have to think this person is physically and mentally not at his or her best, and it is usually a his, by the way. And then it's a sign, I think, of a decay of a system. Yeah, I would agree with you on that.
It really is. It's not nothing against any individuals, but there's so many things broken about that. However. Clearly,
yes, Steve, we agreed it's ageist, by the way.
I know that. I did caveat that I was about to say something ageist before I said it. And Coby, I know he's not a billionaire, but it's not even him I'm talking about specifically. It's like we've got a history in the US of very, very rich people buying their way into some kind of power, which doesn't really happen in a lot of other countries, except for authoritarian dictatorships.
But I think if you look at the UK, we're no better in many respects, man. I mean, you look at definitely. I mean, again, we're going to dive too deep into this, but the reality of it is, money and power are so tightly interwoven, and you just get every kind of step forward. You get basically a step ladder to the top if you've got that type of wealth coming in. So, not great.
Yeah. So, but from I know we're not really meant to give perspectives on this, or you're not meant to give a perspective, on this show. But I really do hope that there's about to be a change of president, because that guy's policies are a step back in time. We're now in a world, even more so because of the pandemic. We are a global world. We're all humans. It doesn't matter if you're British or you're German or you're Dutch or you're American. You should be able to interact with people wherever they are. No walls. We should be breaking all of that down. And there's been several lurches backwards recently to like the 1930s. So I hope there's going to be a change. But I'm definitely no big expert on how that links to recruitment and to HR. So I'm looking forward to smarter people than me coming on and talking to us about it.
Yeah, I'm always looking forward to smarter people than you, Adam. So let's do that. Let's get Tim Sackett on the show. By the way, folks, Laurie Ruettiman unfortunately cannot make it. She emailed me earlier this morning. She is actually away from her home. I think she's on a holiday break, and she just said, hey, listen, the internet's not good. And rather than try and wrestle with bad internet, we thought, okay, no worries, Laurie, we'll bring you back another time. And Lars might actually be joining us after he's dropped his kids off or something like this. So there's a bit of a timing issue, but Lars Schmidt should be with us, which means Tim Sackett is going to be joining us. And it also might mean I'll be bringing people from the crowd to join us. So if you're a US citizen and you want to come on to Brainfood Live on air, please make your comments, make yourself known down on the chat stream, and we'll bring you on. Because what I'm thinking it might be cool to do is we'll bring on different types of people from the US and get their perspective, like Vox Pop style, roll on, roll off. And we're looking for all perspectives here. So if you do have a view as to where this election is going to impact the recruiting and HR space, we want to hear it. Anyway, let's see if we can get Tim on. He is always a man that's not short of a few words and things to say. So let's see how he goes. And Tim's an interesting guy because he's basically not. I don't think he's particularly like a evangelical or small e on either political side. So I think he plows quite a neutral sort of furrow in that regard. So I'm interested to see what his perspective on it and see how it is. Oh, she's stuck in Minneapolis, according to Steve Jewell. I hope not. Okay, I hope Tim can get on, but if not, we'll simply continue. So by the way, if anybody's got additional updates as to how we're getting on with the electoral sort of situation in the US, someone's keeping an eye out for us, please do let us know. What I do know, though, is that this is such a tense time for a lot of the people in the States that, you know, it really is the most important thing. Like, productivity must be on the floor. This is another impact of the presidential election, is that you can imagine there being like a big psychological effect depending on what actually happens and depending on your perspective. So this is apparently quite a close election. So you can imagine that maybe 50% of the population might go to work next week and feel like very low compared to 50% that's very high. How do you deal with that? You're managing a company where you might have a split population, where a percentage of people might believe this side of things, another percentage might believe the other side. You're talking about things like vote rigging, stealing elections, stuff like that. I mean, that is hugely divisive. Like, how do you manage a situation where people are politically divided? Your employee base might be politically divided. I
mean, I can only think that the reason this has all been there was never going to be any. The way that the votes have been counted and all that kind of thing is not any different to what everybody knew was going to be happening a week ago and a week ago and a week ago. And Trump even made it very, very clear he's going to be going nuts and losing his shit as soon as the on the day and the day after. And everybody knew this was going to happen. So why is this a surprise? It's not. But there is a very, very sort of used tactic, which is, if it's not going your way, cause as much chaos as possible, and then see what happens, and give yourself some time by just causing as much disruption as possible. The British Lions did it really well on a tour in South Africa.
Yeah, so it's a totally valid strategy. I mean, maybe in politics, it's awful and unethical. But if the game's not going your way, you disrupt it. If you think if it's a sports type scenario, you're losing playing the gentleman's way. Well, yeah, you throw some sand in his face. And delay for time. You do all that type of stuff, psychologically break them, which we can anticipate this happening. So yeah, but I wonder whether you have any experience of this, though, because being in Scotland, I wonder, and the independence election a couple of years ago was super divisive there as well. And we knew there was like all kinds of people really passionate about it. And it was divided, families, workers, etc. As a manager, what are your tips to deal with that? Where you might have an opinion one way or the other, but you cannot go into that office or go into that sort of Zoom call now particularly, in your face with your own view. You've got to look after people that have a very different view and maybe good workers or maybe really good colleagues, but they just happen to believe something differently.
Well, I've got to be honest, this is not a new subject for me because we're in Glasgow, where you're probably a Protestant or you're probably a Catholic, and it's a very divided city along those lines. So we're kind of know in Glasgow, you don't talk about religion, and by default, you probably don't really talk about politics either. You keep it for your mates in the pub or whatever. You wouldn't do it in a work context. So you're right, we've had some divisive things happen, but as a company, our company's never really had any kind of discussion or debate about it, and I certainly don't. I mean, I've probably made my views clear on things, but I would never try and force them on anybody. So yeah,
that in itself is maybe the number one tip. It's like if you're a manager, then you actually have to essentially try and exit or control the conversational tide that occurs within the office, and you can't be in a situation where you're trying to adjudicate on a political argument. You have to kind of almost dampen that down and get it out of the conversation, and do it that way. I think that there's Tim. Tim, how you doing, man?
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you fine, man.
Perfect.
Great to see you, dude. How is life? Obviously, exciting times for you. Exciting day for the United States. Exciting day for everyone else watching, etc. And thank you for coming on the show, because we wanted to get a US perspective, certainly your perspective, as a manager, as a leader, as a recruiter. How do you deal with politics? How do you deal with the divisive situation? And we kind of moved into a topic whilst you were coming on to the show there, Tim, about what do you talk about on Monday? How do you control that? Because you got 50% might be very passionate one way, 50% passionate the other. How do you play it?
I think for the most part, it's funny because I have so many friends that I think, lean heavy left or lean heavy right. I always call myself this raging moderate. I forcefully kind of hold on to the middle as best I can. The reality is I think most of our workforce is there as well. And I think we don't really have issues in our workplaces because we have these strong relationships with each other. We know each other. If I know that you're a good person with a good heart and you voted for somebody I didn't vote for, you still understand you can have this conversation. But if I don't know you, then it's easy for me to call you a racist or call you whatever. I mean, so to me, within our workplaces, this is less of an issue than what we see, obviously in the U.S. media, which is you are either this or you're this, and there's nothing in between. And that's not reality. But that doesn't get people to click, right? If we don't say something, crazy, then we're not going to get, you're not going to get those clicks. So
you've mentioned something really interesting, Tim. It's do you know the human beings in the team? And if you have that sort of biographical context, you have the social capital built up, you have all of those things, it becomes much harder to have a superficial label on someone and saying you're this. Which, people immediately get annoyed and pissed off when that happens, right? When you get labeled of any type, it's of course, you've just reduced my humanity into this one concept, and you resist on it. So that's actually the first thing as managers maybe they need to do. They need to build teams in preparation for future disputation or preparation for the ability to have conversation without moving into dispute. The only way to do that is to build a relationship first.
Yeah, I love the videos. There's a bunch going around within the U.S. market where people will go to the protest, and whether it's a Trump protest or opposite protest, whatever it might be, whatever side is there, and they'll start asking questions about the people's beliefs. And what they're doing is asking the entire platform of the other party that they're against, and the person's like, "Oh yes, I'm for that. Oh yes, I'm for that," and then they do this exact opposite. And the reality is we're mostly alike, and so many studies show this, but then there's these few little things that we have as outliers that we tend to believe pull us apart. I think we're all closer than not. I've seen people in the comments going, "Oh my gosh, the U.S. is divided worse than the Civil War time." I don't buy into that because I have friends that lean heavy both ways, and I just don't think that's the God honest truth, from where we're really at. But
Tim, I've got a really specific question about that because from outside of the USA, it looks like your country is split in half and half of them will not talk to the other half unless it's on a battleground, and like in an actual fight with machine guns. So the reason that it looks like that is because we get from the outside, you've got two different types of media that are way more split than we have in Europe.
Oh, then there's no media that's in the middle that will actually give you both sides. Yeah. Like, hey, by the way, here's actually the truth, because the truth is always in the middle, right? And we have no media that will do that. It's either left media or right media, and no one in between.
That's exactly what I was asking about. So do you think that's a problem? Because I'm not saying that this doesn't happen in the UK. It does. We have got left and right leaning media, but we also have a lot more that is in the middle. So we think we get better truth than you get in America.
Yeah, Lee's saying like, hey, the election results speak to how divided we are. No, the election results speak to a broken two-party system that forces people to make a decision when they're not happy with either one. The vast majority of Americans, if asked, would you vote here or here, they would actually go, well, I kind of like some stuff over here and I kind of like some stuff over here, and I'd rather have this third decision. But if I make a third decision, like for a third-party candidate in the U.S., that's basically throwing your vote away. So you're forced to go one way or the other in a two-party system. By the way, both the Dems and the Republicans, they actually are so happy because it's working exactly the way they want it. There's two parties that want to have power. And when you have 50-50, they're going to maintain power. If one party had like 70% of the vote and one had 30, it would open itself up for a third party. So the two-party system is doing exactly what we want. By the way, one more thing. We're talking about the 1% of Americans that are in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, that's a president. All these people are rich. We're talking about 100 millionaires fighting with 10 millionaires. They're all rich.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Let me say this as well, Tim. I think you're absolutely right about the political system actually promotes this division, right? You can't have a two-party system. It's binary system. Of course, you're going to go into crowds. We have the same problem in the UK. It's in effect the first past the post type of thing. Yes, we have regional parties and all the rest of it. And the SNP is just basically a weird outlier because of the Scottish independence movement. But the reality of it is, we were oscillating between the Conservative and Labour Party here. We had one chance, man, over the last 50 years to do something. And I would just appeal to the United States. If you do have a problem with this binary approach and you get a shot to change it, you have to grab it. You have to grab it.
I keep waiting for like Jeff Bezos to come forward and say, hey, I'm going to start the Amazon party and we're going to have, this is our candidate. It's a Latino female, and I'm going to put $10 billion behind her, and we're just going to buy a third-party election as president, because it would work. I mean, we like to talk about how much money is thrown into the U.S. politics. The reality is the U.S. presidential election this year cost about $3 billion.
That's incredible.
But in the big scheme of things, that's actually fairly cheap. I mean, Bezos could buy an election, and it wouldn't even impact his spending at all.
Yeah.
And so and there's so many other billionaires around the world that could actually buy an election in the U.S. And we're going to see it, by the way, because Georgia, the state of Georgia has a Senate runoff in January for 2 Senate seats, which could flip the Senate. And you want to see money being spent? Holy crap. It's about to get completely insane for about, 6 weeks here.
Yeah, I mean, there's another side of it. Like, do you allow campaigning to actually happen? I think there's certain countries in Europe where campaigning is not actually allowed.
Is Australia do it where you only have 30 days to campaign and to run any ads, to have any signage up, all of that?
We even have that in the UK where there's a block, I think 4 weeks before the vote, you can't actually post anything.
That would be the one thing I would ask for. Like, if I'm so sick of seeing stupid ads on the TV, it's the most ridiculous thing in the US.
Yeah, you get blasted. You get absolutely blasted by them, don't you? Go ahead.
Can I ask about the impact of? So the last election was the one that was very much impacted by social media and by the advertising options that you get on social media and by the filter bubbles that Facebook creates, for example. Do you think that's been as much of a factor this time?
It doesn't seem like that, the social media aspect. I'll tell you, it's funny because both the Trump campaign and the Biden campaign, when you take a look at the big misses where they really missed this year, it's on TikTok. Now, of course, Trump couldn't, right? Because of the whole China thing. Like, he put himself in this situation where it might have actually cost him the election because he could have been gigantic on TikTok. But Biden also,
he likes dancing.
But Biden could have also taken advantage of it, and they really didn't. And the algorithm on TikTok is so strong.
Yeah.
I think that's the giant miss from a social media standpoint. But I'm thankful that it didn't happen because it could have been completely crazy.
You don't want that. I mean, ultimately, it's very youth driven also. Therefore, I think it was always going to go left rather than right. And I think obviously because of the China connection as well, it's going to be politically toxic to be appearing on there for any candidate. I think it would have been a problem. Let's talk about big tech though. Is there going to be a difference between the policies of Donald Trump, a second Donald Trump kind of presidency, and a first Biden presidency with regards to big tech? We've seen some interesting things happen actually in California recently, where Uber, Lyft, for instance, they won their battle in terms of, the drivers are going to be independent contractors, not employees. That was very interesting. Let's talk about that. Gig working, big tech. Is there going to be a difference between the behaviors of these two politicians and these two parties? Yeah,
I mean, definitely. Again, I think the Biden camp is going to come in and try to make a lot of change. The question is if they can actually, if they don't have the Senate, it's difficult to make real change without having big compromise, right? When you have the GOP leading the Senate and the Dems leading the House, the markets here actually like that. They like having the House divided because what you have is slower change that takes place. That's more compromise change versus having one party have both the Senate and the House in the U.S. So from a big tech standpoint, it is like the whole Prop 22 thing in California is interesting because if you think about how democratic, how liberal voting California is by numbers, they should have actually voted Prop 22 down, right? Because usually you would say, no. If I'm a liberal, I want those people to be employed. I want them to have full insurance. I want them to be, all those kind of things that you get from an employment status. And yet they voted liberal, but then they voted very conservative on Prop 22. It's a really strange dynamic that happened in California.
They needed the rights. I mean, ultimately, if they went, if basically Uber and Lyft lost, they'd be out of California. And
for sure.
If you've been to California, you definitely need those two services. Like, if you don't have a car, there's no way you can move anywhere.
To me, that's a great example of when we say that the country's divided, of how we're really more alike than not. Like, again, people vote with their own self-interest and they're like, oh, well, no, I'm voting for the people. Oh, but wait a minute, I want my Uber ride. Like, it's the dumbest thing ever, right? Like, you would never vote that way if you were truly, leaning left. So
that's amazing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got a question about, so Trump's been, saying a lot that the economy in the USA has never been better. He's the big business guy. He's the guy who's built the economy. Everything's been, on the rise during his 4 years. Is this all true? And also, is it going down if he doesn't win?
It's concerning. I don't know. The economy's impacted massively by COVID, right? I mean, we have, high unemployment. We have layoffs happening all over the place. Has the stock market responded well? Yeah, it has. But again, that speaks to about 10% of America. The other 90% that don't own shares of stock and things of that sort. Like, the economy is not great for them. So it's easy to say, oh, yeah, the economy is great. But all he's pointing towards really is prior to COVID, ultra low unemployment, right? Historically low unemployment, which again, so the economy was buzzing right along. But now we have this pandemic hit, and we have massive issues like everybody else, I think, across the world right now because of the economy. Again, we're going to be in a situation similar to like 08, 09, where you come out of a recession and you have to really build it back up. I foresee that we're going to see that over the next couple of years in the U.S. market, as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. So Steve's just said that you're on point, Tim, about the stock ownership. It's absolutely true, and I think if you probably assess overall Trump's impact on American economy, probably smaller numbers of people have prospered much more than the mass individuals have.
Yeah. And I think most people know or understand, or it's been pointed out within the stock market that you have, literally, the 5 big tech companies that are running the stock market and running, and that's the vast majority. Most of the Fortune 500, in fact, I think like 97% of the Fortune 500, their stock price is actually down over the last year. And so, there's a really kind of false narrative to looking at the U.S. stock market.
Yeah, it's the worst signal ever, isn't it? But unfortunately, it's the most easiest one to use, because there's a number that goes up or down, and there's a line chart that goes up or down, and you can say, hey, this is the best way to actually reflect the economy. It's not. It's share price and it's market speculation on the value of these companies. It's got very little to do with the fundamentals of who's actually in work, who's getting paid, who's paying rent.
By the way, it is funny because you saw in the last couple of weeks before the election, there was like some big like music artists, like rappers coming out. You saw some big like sports figures come out that were African American, that are rich, right? They have massive amounts of money, that said, oh, by the way, I'm gonna go for Trump, and they got skewered. But the reality was, when Biden came in and said, oh, by the way, if you make over $400,000 a year, we're gonna tax the rich massively. What did you want them to do? I mean, again, like, I care about people, I care about the world. If I'm 50 Cent, but am I gonna give $5 million more a year in taxes because of that? Like, that's just a hard decision for people to make when you ask somebody to give away that much money in taxes. Again, is it going to impact their life and how they live? Maybe not, but still, if you've worked your butt off and you came from nothing, I mean, you literally came from dirt, and now you're rich, and someone's saying, oh, by the way, I'm going to take 40% of your money. That's not a great conversation to have with a rich person that made it from nothing.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the signature policy differences, you would say, between the two camps, in the sense that the Democratic Party have got an increased rate and an increased kind of number where basically the super rich are going to pay their way. That tends to be popular sort of across the wider population, of course, because the sort of the super rich are a very small minority typically. But as you say, Tim, some of these people are prominent in their field, and therefore we cannot sort of expect them to say otherwise, and very hard to castigate them as well. So that's very much the case.
Yeah, my hope is, and I think, and I can't speak for the American people, right? My hope is, as an American individually, is that we get somebody in, which I think is going to happen with all signs, that's going to act more presidential. And that's going to act as a leader. That's going to bring people together versus trying to actually constantly, in everything they do, pull people apart. It's been the leaders that the U.S. has been used to. And it's really, I think, probably, again, been one of those, whether it's been a Democratic leader or a Republican leader, they've always come in with this understanding of, hey, even if you didn't vote for me, I'm still your president, and I'm still going to, work for the good of the entire country, not just the good of a certain segment of the country. And I think that's been the one thing that over the last 4 years, that has just really worn so many people down, is that you have this person that's clearly just working for a certain segment of society, and that's it.
You know what? Let's talk about that very quickly, Tim, because I mean, again, it's premature to talk about a post-mortem of Trump's leadership style, let's say, because he's still in place, he's still in situ, still, I believe, disputing the result, or will do so. And the US system, of course, means he's in place for another 2 months, right? He's still there all the way through the next year. So all kinds of things might still happen. So I don't want to trigger it. Yeah, I don't want to go too far too soon. But his leadership style is interesting because, as you say, it's undeniably divisive. Like, the style is to create a ruckus and to have a lot of conflict going on, and then sort of somehow pile his way through the mess. But still, it seems he's getting his way a great deal of the time. So I wonder whether this style of leadership has a future in some way, or do you think no?
No, I do. I think unfortunately, I think it signals from a marketing standpoint. I think it signals that we'll see more of this, because what Trump understood better than any politician before him was, all I need is to have my base show up and vote for me, and I'll beat the Democrats. Because if you think about, mostly the Democrats are mostly a younger party, and the younger people tend not to, like, they'll wake up on voting day and they'll go, it's cold and rainy, F it, I'm not showing up, right? I'm not gonna go vote. And he knew that. So like, he played to his base. He could care less if you weren't in his base. He didn't give a shit about what you thought and what you cared about or how much you hated him, because he knew all he had to do was have these people show up and he was going to be a candidate. Before him, no other politician would put themselves in that situation where they just totally disregarded everybody else that might not vote for him.
Let me locate this in a corporate context, though, Tim. Like, can you imagine a CEO behaving in this way? Just coming in as a disrupt. The purpose is to disrupt. The style is to disrupt. I want HR to hate marketing. I want this to happen because I can pilot my way through it. I don't know.
Hey, by the way, we have some that are, I would say, leaning that way. When you take a look at Bezos and you also take a look at Tesla, where you have leaders like, I mean, Bezos is pretty clear in his culture. We're type A. We're on a rocket ship. If you want to be in a rocket ship, you come work here. And if you want to act about, like, if you want to cry about, work-life balance and crap like that, we don't want you, and you're a piece of shit. Get out of here. They're pretty clear.
Travis Kalanick, another example, the Uber guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we see leaders that are leaning that way of saying, look, we're strongly this, and if you're not this, then get the hell out of here. We don't even care about you. Now, I think it's more difficult for Amazon being the size they are. Tesla, has a little bit, easier time because they're still fairly small, even though their valuation is gigantic. As a company, they're not huge, they're enterprise, but they're not, like, obviously one of the top, size companies.
So I want to ask about the impact on recruitment. What do we think is going to be the difference if Trump retains the presidency, or if it goes to Biden?
Well, I mean, I think with Trump, we'll see more kind of, circling the wagons of America, buy American, hire American, all the same stuff we've already seen for 4 years. It's just going to get deeper and deeper, especially knowing at this point he's got 4 years left, and it doesn't matter. He doesn't have to keep anybody happy at this point. He can do anything he wants because he's done.
That's a really interesting point. The second time there, he's like, "There's no future after 4 years. You might as well do what the hell you want, right?" So
yeah. So it's a scary thought. I think a Biden camp coming in will really work to try to undo a lot of the policies and stuff that Trump put in place. Unfortunately, if he doesn't have the Senate, he's going to have some difficult time doing some of that. Now, I think without Trump in place, you might have some conservative GOP senators that will probably come across the aisle and help the Democrats actually get some of this stuff done. That is, again, more middle of the road, more populist, more things that a lot of the country actually would rather have. And some of that would be immigration, visa status. I mean, some of this stuff got so difficult, so hard. And you have a lot of American companies like just saying, look, we don't have enough tech talent in our country for what we need to develop and grow our companies. So yeah, we want to hire Americans and we want to educate Americans, and we've been working on that. At the same time, we just have so many jobs that we need to fill if we truly want to actually have more jobs for more Americans. Like, we need to be able to, actually kind of bring in a lot of this talent from other countries. I think we would see that turnaround in a Biden presidency. I mean, at least I think that's my hope, from that standpoint.
Yeah, I think the immigration sort of topic was obviously a very key part of Trump's sort of his first win, was this idea that, you need to put the walls up both physically and conceptually in many respects. And the pulling back of the H-1B, for instance, and the raising of the bar in those cases, and the general kind of vibe. If you keep banging on about how bad other people are, generally speaking, most people might not want to come over with the same degree of enthusiasm as they did before, which is a huge problem for the highly skilled areas like AI and stuff. Like one of the big reasons why the US is leading AI is because the US is actually the best place at attracting AI talent. It pulls in all of these geniuses from universities all over the world because you can offer the lifestyle, you can offer the companies, the career progression, the remuneration, everything. But if you're signaling hostility, then of course people are going to think twice.
Well, Hung, like over the last decade, the U.S. higher education, the university system was exceptional at bringing in Chinese students because twofold. One is Chinese students coming in pay out of state tuition, so they pay a higher cost. And by the way, they always pay cash. And so you saw universities like I'm a mile and a half from Michigan State University, 40,000 students. On an average year, anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 of those students were Chinese nationals. Every university kind of got fat and drunk on Chinese money, bringing in Chinese students. Now, it also helped the U.S. because we had so many Chinese kids coming here, most of which were going through high-tech programs, engineering, IT, whatever that might be, data science. And then when they got here and they saw the freedoms they had, they were like, hey, I want to stay. This is pretty cool, And so we had this great pipeline of Chinese talent coming in. Trump comes in, coronavirus happens, and now we have no Chinese students here, or very little, right? And so there's been a gigantic change, and you have universities actually going out of business because they don't have the Chinese money supporting them.
Yeah.
I was about to say that's a global phenomenon, man. I mean,
Australia.
Ultimately, it's also similar to tourism. A foreign student or a tourist is actually the ideal person because they're literally coming in, dumping cash into your economy, and because they're already kind of at least 18 when they arrive. So you as an economy have not spent time looking after them and growing them and educating them. At that point, they're coming in just throwing money at you. It's generally a good thing economically, but obviously from a cultural point of view, people have an issue with that sometimes. And, there was a little bit of a pushback that way. And maybe that carried Trump and other kind of right-wing nativist forces, if you like, to the positions that they're in. Anyway,
I'm interested to see from a global perspective, because it seemed like when Trump came in, we started to hear, whether it was in the UK or EMEA or whatever, you started to see more countries doing the same kind of behavior, right? Like, hey, why aren't we just hiring our own people, and why are we letting people just randomly come across our borders? And I'm wondering if the U.S. starts to change policy on that, if that changes across the globe as well.
Really hope so, because you're right. I'm not sure it started with Trump. I think there was other countries where it was already starting to happen, because I think the whole Brexit thing started probably a bit before Trump came in.
Yeah.
However, so it has happened in other places at the same kind of time. But I really do hope that he, as the biggest figurehead for reduce immigration and look after your own people, and that's it. And I'm not even going to say it, but forget everybody else. Basically, I really hope that kind. Because we're making so much progress in becoming a real global world, and and removing borders. So on that, crossed, that does happen.
On that note, Adam, basically nationalism is actually usually an international project. Trump had many allies across Europe and in Australia. All of the Murdoch empire, who builds these kind of political figures, they typically are pro-Trump and have a similar kind of perspective.
Nigel Farage.
Don't even mention his name on this show again. Okay, listen, we're running out of time, surprisingly, and there's a bunch of questions I want to ask Tim. But once we've done that, I also want to bring on a vox populi type of thing and cycle in some folks from the US and get some action there. But let's deal with the questions first, Tim, because some of these are really good. I'll go first with Pooja. Pooja's mentioned, thoughts on the election effect on industries like clean energy, healthcare, and stuff like this. So directly related. I think the policies of the two parties are different. So what do you think a Biden presidency means to, if you like, the focus on different industries?
Yeah, I want to say there's two potential scenarios here. One is a Biden presidency where he has both control of the House and the Senate for the next 2 years. You're going to see a drastic impact to healthcare, probably in growth. and also for clean energy. If he doesn't have control of the Senate, you're going to see movement there. You're going to see energy around this. You're probably going to see compromise, but you're not going to see anything happen very fast.
Yep, absolutely. And obviously there's a big divide between, are you into oil and fossil fuels, or do you think green energy is the future, etc.?
So I will tell you, we have some indicators of some of this that will change regardless. Like, I know I'm in Michigan, which is the big automotive state, right? And you have General Motors, Chrysler, Ford. General Motors has come out publicly and said, hey, over the next year, we're going to hire close to 4,000 new engineers, all of which are really reflective of them moving to a complete electrical vehicle model.
Yeah, you have to
and they see this already coming. So whether Biden or Trump or anybody's in place, it doesn't matter, because they saw the success of Tesla. In all the automotive now is going to follow that. And by the way, that's trucking, that's heavy industry, defense vehicles, everything is going electric.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. Okay, great. Okay, Adam, do you want to, in fact, you keep chatting with people. That's pretty good that we've got this division of labor here. Jamie Dillon's asked, what shift would you expect to see around diversity and inclusion? I think this is a very important point, because, again, philosophically, these two people are very different on this. And Jamie's added a kind of an addendum to that. The last Democratic reign did not address this nearly enough, is Jamie's view. So Trump versus Biden, what does that mean for DE&I?
Yeah, I'm it's hard for me in the U.S. to talk about DE&I because I'm a white dude, I'm privileged, I'm blah, blah, blah. Like, I get told all these things by people who are specialists in DE&I. I think what we'll see is, again, rollback of a lot of the Trump things that he put in place. Things like, oh, you can't force somebody to go to DE&I training, or you can't tell them that they're privileged, or you can't say things like that. And so I think we'll see an increase in focus on, again, how do we bring everybody together? We know that there's a huge social justice movement in the U.S. We'll see continued push and effort and emphasis on that. We definitely have. It's hard. Again, I'm listening to see what you guys think. I would expect from the outside looking into the U.S., you think the entire police across the U.S. are just racist assholes, because that's how the media plays it. But the reality is, I think, like in any organization, you have a few bad actors, and then you have the vast majority of which are just great people that put their lives on the line to save anybody and everybody. And so again, I think there has to be a kind of some conversation and ability around how do we really kind of come to grips with this in the U.S. But we'll see what happens.
I've got something to add to that, which is we don't know for definite that like as in he's admitted it, that Joe Biden is a sexual molester. However, we do know that about Trump. Again, like there's Joe. I don't want to get. I feel like that does link to DE&I.
I was going to say I happen to agree with your assessment, Adam, but I'm not sure it links to the point.
Well, it does. It's about treating people.
There's a lot of background with Biden that's very harassment related as well. So like it's really difficult to have this conversation. I will just put it out there that again, I did not vote for Donald Trump. So me saying that Biden has a creepy past as well is just the honest to God truth. I mean, he's a 47-year politician who did whatever it took to get reelected. And the guy's got a creepy past. So,
okay, let's stay away from the tabloid headlines for this one. Adam's asked actually a more sensible question, which is the final one I'm going to ask you, Tim, with this segment. Will UBI have more potential under Biden than Trump? UBI, universal basic income. I don't think it's necessarily a left or right issue in my view. However, you can probably make the case that, Biden is in the Democratic Party. One of the biggest evangelists for UBI was Andrew Yang. He's a Democrat. So do you see UBI as being more likely under Biden or Trump?
So I actually heard a podcast just last week with Andrew Yang, and there's a good chance that he will be in the cabinet with Biden, right? Which I think then lends itself to potentially there might be something there. Now, Biden will not get that if he doesn't control the Senate, so that's going to be problematic. He potentially could get it if he controls the Senate. The question is going to be, what position does that put him and the Democratic Party in for re-election 4 years from now? Because that's totally gonna get the base going. There's a lot of people in the U.S. Again, there's still this dream, this kind of American dream, which is I can come from nothing and I can be a 1%er. I can make myself rich. And whether you're Latino, Black, white, anybody that comes into the U.S. understands there's this American dream. Now, is it reality for most people? I don't think so.
Hasn't that bubble popped, Tim? I mean, that's like the story,
it
right?
still hasn't. So when you talk to somebody saying, hey, we're just going to give somebody money, whether they do anything or not, that's still a really sticky issue in the U.S., right? And again, that's not a white issue, Black issue, brown issue, because it's a really hot point in the Latino community that says, wait a minute, we work our asses off. Why is some white dude sitting in a trailer smoking meth? Why does he get $1,000 a month for doing nothing? That's a hard one to come across, right?
Let's put it this way. I think those two things, I mean, I'm not an expert. I think it is a little bit more likely in the Biden, but I agree it's not happening in the US anytime soon, or at least not at a federal level. Maybe there'll be some local experiments somewhere. It's definitely going to happen in Europe before anywhere, in my view. Someone's going to do it, pull the trigger, Finland or something like that. They're going to just roll it out.
By the way, all the studies that happen, again, granted, these studies are done in a very controlled way in a much smaller country populace than the U.S. They have really positive incomes, right? Like if you have someone who's struggling to pull themselves out and you prop them up and give them this base, and then you allow them to go and work a basic job and work their way up that career ladder, it turns out they actually will do that.
Dude,
there's good data.
Yeah, it is good data. And not only that, but it's the idea that people sit at home and do nothing for a small amount of money is just basically, I think it's just an outdated stereotype. It's a way to break the poverty cycle, because when you're super poor, it's actually quite expensive to be poor. You've got to take bus fares everywhere. It takes time to do stuff. So yeah, I'm a big proponent, and I look forward to seeing what is going to happen. Okay, that's a good question answered. Listen, folks, we're about out of time, but I want to keep going because I'd love to get more voices from the crowd. So if you're still watching this and you're a US citizen, I want to just invite you on screen. And you better have your makeup ready, I think. So you can say no to this. I'm going to guess who's actually American. I know a few Americans here, so let's try it. Coby Schneider, you're American. You're up very early, Coby. But I'm going to invite you on and see whether you're happy to talk with us and give us like your 10 seconds. What do you think the impact of this election is going to be on recruiting and HR? I think it is significant. Whatever happens, I think this entire episode has just been exhausting generally for the people of the United States. I mean, this week, probably this...
Are you talking about this episode of Brainfood Live?
No, well, it's always exhausting for me, man. I need to go to bed after every single episode. People don't realize this, but I'm either in the bath afterwards or I have to take a snooze. I need to sleep this off. But the reality of it is, it's Coby. Coby, how you doing?
Hi, good.
Coby, you actually look as if you're working. That's really impressive.
I actually was.
Thank you for joining us. I don't want to bleed a huge amount of your time because I've just roped you in. But I wanted to get your view as to what you think the impact of this election is on recruiting and HR. And what do you think the impact of the verdict, the final outcome, is going to be on recruiting and HR?
I don't know that I have anything to add that Tim hasn't already covered in terms of impact to recruiting. I think that we're on the verge of quite a bit of violence and a lot of confusion over the next couple months. Yeah, so sorry, I don't have a whole lot to add to your question on that.
Sorry, Coby. So what you're saying is this kind of interregnum, if you like, between having the vote sort of tallied and to the point where there's disputation, that's just a recipe for conflict, and that's potentially dangerous at society level. And presumably that's going to impact organizations at the company level also, I guess. Like, what do you got to do to keep your people safe? What happens if there's internal politics? I mean, Tim, in your situation, you mentioned, hey, if people knew each other, that's fine, but maybe other companies don't have that type of relationship. That could be very difficult for people in HR to try and manage. Is it our job to try and manage that? I have no idea.
Yeah, I think what we're going to have is a lot of information coming at us, and a lot of it conflicting, and it's going to cause confusion, and it's going to generate a lot of anxiety. So I think from an HR perspective, not so much talent acquisition, but HR, I think a dialogue in the office has to be opened up to help employees feel comfortable and help them digest what they're hearing and give them an outlet. We're all working from home, so there's stress going on at home for employees as well. So I think that's really near term what employees are going to feel. I don't think it's related to talent acquisition so much. Like I said, I think Tim covered that pretty well. I don't have anything new to add. But from an HR perspective, I think employees are going to need an outlet. They're going to need to feel safe and comfortable. And they're going to need to have information validated because they're going to be confused.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting point, Coby. So you're saying that HR has a role to play in this, and they actually have to take control of it and not basically to have a laissez-faire approach to it. They've got to say, hey, listen, we're going to talk about this. These are the things this is how we're going to talk about it, and create some sort of structure for dialogue to take place.
Right.
Okay, great. Well, listen, Coby, thanks for popping in and joining us and giving your input. I'm going to keep cycling through because I think this might be a useful thing to do. Good luck with
Coby.
Whatever you're doing, and stay safe, everybody. Everyone's fingers crossed, basically, for peaceful outcomes. I don't think anybody wants to see any kind of violent or antagonistic behavior in the United States.
I have hope. I have hope that we won't see the violence. The vast majority of Trump people I know, they act big, but the reality is, I think if Biden gets to be president, they'll wake up the next day and go, okay, I got to get back to work, and go do their thing. That's my hope. Most of the big cities in the U.S. boarded up, shops and stuff the night of the election, not because they thought that Biden would win. It was because they thought Trump would win, and that the left would come out and do looting and rioting and everything else. So I think there's this misnomer, I think, within the U.S. that all these Trump people are going to go out and cause a civil war. I don't think so. I hope not. I mean, it's hope. I hope not.
Let's keep the faith in that regard. And to be honest with you, work can sometimes help. I think this is a part of it where work can really be actually a valuable thing. So. Okay, I think we are running super out of time, so I'm not even sure we're going to get time to bring anybody else on, which is a total shame. But that's okay. We're coming to the end of this show, so thank you, everybody, for watching it. It's a fascinating topic. Inevitably, you can't divorce politics from the world of work. The decisions that politicians make impact businesses and impact sort of jobs and all the rest of it. Hopefully we've touched on some of those topics today. And like I say, I just want to say, cross fingers for everybody, that we get a safe, peaceful outcome, and we'll get back to some sort of normal way of working as soon as we can. Okay, everybody, thanks for watching Brainfood Live on Air. We will be back with you next week. I have no idea what we're talking about, probably something equally interesting. Make sure you follow the channel and you'll find out. Thanks again to our sponsors, Workable. They are an ATS. You should check them out. If you're looking to upgrade, I will share the link again in the email to follow up. Okay, that's it, everybody. Have a good day. We could have kept that show going forever, I reckon, because it's a super interesting topic, and it's one of those that is, it's pub talk type of stuff, isn't it?
I don't understand why. I mean, I'm doing it right now. Okay, you go into Google U.S. election, Biden 264, Trump 214. Why is this taking days?
Because they gotta count them, and I think they've got like manually count them.
Why don't they have a machine that just goes? You put it all in, and it gives you like 5 seconds later, it's done 100,000 votes and tells you exactly what the number is.
You only do that through weighing them. That's the only way you can do it, right? But in this case, I think they have to manually check who looked at them. And I also learned that, of course, all the states run separate ways of voting, with separate ways of different ballots and all this type of stuff. So it's not a single system. So the speed of it is dependent at the state level. So I can understand a little bit as to why it's a little bit chaotic. But you're right. I think
shouldn't be that difficult to have a barcode system and a box, and everything gets slotted in, and 5 seconds later it's got to give you the answer.
Yeah,
it's not hard to do.
No, it's not about the technical difficulty. You should all do it on Facebook with a Facebook like. You could easily do it that way.
And Russia wins.
Well, I mean, if you verify ID, you could probably fix it. But anyway, the point of the matter is, it's not a technical problem. People know how to do it technically. There's all kinds of political reasons why you wouldn't. I mean, we see it in the UK, where boundaries get redrawn to favor one party or the other. Those types of things are a big part of why it's not an efficient process. Sometimes it's designed not to be efficient. Anyway, listen, I thought that was a great show. Like I say, thank you for Tim, thank you Coby as well. And I do want to reiterate, good luck to everybody for this weekend. Good luck for next couple of months. Hopefully it's going to be okay. Anyway, that's about it. See you later, everyone. We'll be back next week. We'll catch you then.
Bye.